It was a cold Monday morning in a small American town. Students filled the hallways of Jefferson High School, laughing and talking before class. Among them was a quiet 16-year-old boy named Ethan. Unlike the other students, Ethan always kept to himself. He never joined school activities, rarely spoke in class, and often looked worried. Most students assumed he was shy. Some even thought he was unfriendly, but no one knew the truth. The only person who seemed to notice Ethan's pain was his English teacher, Mrs. Anderson. She had taught for over 20 years and had learned that sometimes the quietest students carried the heaviest burdens. One day, while collecting homework, Mrs. Anderson noticed something unusual. Ethan's assignment was written on the back of old grocery receipts and torn pieces of paper. The handwriting was neat, but the paper looked worn and damaged. After class, she gently asked him, "Ethan, is everything okay at home?" The boy immediately looked nervous. "Yes, ma'am," he replied quickly. But Mrs. Anderson could tell he wasn't telling the whole truth. Over the next few weeks, she continued observing him. She noticed that he never bought lunch from the cafeteria. He often wore the same clothes for several days. Sometimes he looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept. One rainy afternoon, Mrs. Anderson stayed late grading papers. As she walked through the parking lot, she noticed a small, old van parked near the back fence. A faint light glowed inside. Curious, she stepped closer. What she saw broke her heart. Inside the van sat Ethan, doing his homework under a battery-powered lamp. The teacher stood frozen. Ethan wasn't waiting for someone. He was living there. The next morning, Mrs. Anderson called Ethan into her classroom before school. "Ethan," she said softly, "you don't have to tell me everything, but I want you to know that you're not alone." The boy's eyes filled with tears. For several seconds, he remained silent. Then the truth finally came out. A year earlier, Ethan's father had passed away after a serious illness. Medical bills had consumed the family's savings. Soon after, his mother lost her job. They were evicted from their apartment and had nowhere to go. To avoid being separated by social services, Ethan and his mother had been living in an old van while she worked multiple part-time jobs. "Please don't tell anyone," Ethan whispered. "If people find out, they'll laugh at me." Mrs. Anderson felt tears forming in her own eyes. "I promise," she said. "Your secret is safe with me." And she meant it. Instead of sharing his story, she quietly began helping. She arranged for Ethan to receive free school meals without drawing attention. She found ways to provide school supplies anonymously. She even convinced other teachers to create a small emergency fund for struggling students without mentioning Ethan's name. Weeks passed. Ethan had no idea how. Many people were helping him behind the scenes. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful. One evening, however, a problem arose. The school principal discovered several unusual requests connected to student assistance programs. He demanded an explanation. Mrs. Anderson faced a difficult choice. She could reveal Ethan's situation and justify everything, or she could protect the boys. Privacy, without hesitation. She chose to protect him. When questioned, she simply said, "Some students need help. That's all you need to know." The principal wasn't satisfied, but Mrs. Anderson refused to reveal Ethan's identity. Rumors eventually began spreading around school about a student receiving special treatment. Some students became curious, others became judgmental. Still, Mrs. Anderson never broke her promise. Months later, a local charity partnered with the school to support families facing housing insecurity. Through that program, Ethan and his mother were finally offered temporary housing. For the first time in over a year, they slept in real beds. Ethan couldn't believe it. His life slowly began to change. His grades improved. Dramatically, he started participating in class discussions. He even joined the school's debate club. For the first time, people noticed not his struggles, but his talents. Years passed. Ethan graduated near the top of his class and earned a scholarship to college. Before leaving town, he visited Mrs. Anderson one last time. "I never thanked you properly," he said, The teacher smiled. You don't owe me anything. But Ethan shook his head. You protected me when I was ashamed of my situation. You saw me as a person, not a problem. Mrs. Anderson's eyes filled with tears. Then Ethan handed her a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, You kept my secret when revealing it would have been easier. Because of that, I never lost my dignity. And because I kept my dignity, I never lost hope. The teacher carefully folded the letter and placed it in her desk. Years later, she still kept it there. One afternoon, long after Ethan had graduated, a luxury car pulled into the school parking lot. Successful young attorney stepped out. It was Ethan. He had returned to donate thousands of dollars to help students facing hardships. When reporters asked why he was making the donation, his answer was simple. Because one teacher taught me that kindness doesn't need an audience. Mrs. Anderson stood nearby, smiling quietly. The reporters never learned the full story, and neither did the town, because a promise made years ago was still being honored. The greatest thing Mrs. Anderson ever gave. Ethan wasn't money, food, or school supplies. It was dignity. And sometimes, dignity is the very thing that saves a life. The end.